She walked into the ballroom with courage in her eyes, but within minutes, everything she believed about respect, power, and belonging shattered. What happened next changed not just her night, but her future. If you love emotional, life-changing stories, make sure you subscribe to Black Inside 2.0 for more heartfelt storytelling. The ballroom glowed with worn gold lighting, the kind that softened every edge and made the world look peaceful, even when it wasn't. Thick chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks, their brilliance reflecting off polished floors and tall mirrors. The event was meant to be a celebration, a gathering of leaders, thinkers, families, and friends. It was the kind of night where people wore their best and behaved even better. At least, that was the intention. Arielle Montgomery stood near a row of chairs, smoothing her bright blue blazer with a steady hand. Her hair, braided, styled, and gathered into a long, elegant ponytail, fell like a ribbon down her back. Her earrings caught the light every time she turned her head. She wasn't nervous, she was used to rooms like this, places where people looked before they spoke, where assumptions walked in before introductions. She had been invited personally. She belonged here, she knew that, but not everyone else seemed to. To her left, a few guests glanced in her direction before looking away. Not with hostility, just hesitation. A kind of quiet confusion. A young man in a navy velvet jacket stood near the center of the room, laughing loudly, pointing upward as if telling a joke only he found truly hilarious. His confidence filled the space, demanding attention. Arielle turned away from him, checking her phone. Her mother had texted earlier. Running late. Be patient, be gracious, be yourself. Arielle smiled at the message. That phrase, be yourself, had been her mother's mantra since childhood. Her mother, Governor Elaine Montgomery, was a woman who walked through the world with unwavering calm. She didn't raise her voice, she raised expectations. She didn't lecture, she lived by example. Arielle admired her more than she could express. Tonight, they were supposed to arrive together, but a last-minute meeting had delayed the governor. Arielle agreed to go ahead, sure she'd be fine on her own. And she was fine, until she wasn't. The first shift in the air, Arielle felt someone step in front of her. She looked up. A security officer, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a neatly pressed suit, stood just a few feet away. His expression was polite but firm, the kind of look people wore when they were about to make a decision they didn't want to defend later. "Excuse me," he said softly, "may I ask who invited you tonight?" Arielle blinked. "I'm on the guest list." "Yes," he replied, "but I didn't see you arrive with anyone." "I came early," she said calmly. "My mother will be here shortly." The officer hesitated, glancing around the room as if searching for someone to validate her presence. "What's your mother's name?" he asked. Arielle paused, not because she was unsure, but because the question felt odd. In spaces like this, names mattered, and hers mattered more than most. "Elaine Montgomery," she answered. The officer nodded, but his doubt didn't fade. In fact, another officer nearby began walking over, watching the exchange carefully. Arielle felt a small, familiar ache blooming in her chest, not anger, not fear. Just exhaustion. She knew that feeling well. The effort of having to prove what should already be clear. The public question. The officer cleared his throat. "I'm going to need to verify," he said gently. "These events are highly secured, so I hope you understand." Arielle took a breath. She did understand. She understood the policies, the procedures, the need for order. What she didn't understand was why he hadn't asked anyone else. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits breezed past without so much as a glance from security. But she, standing here in a professional blazer, holding an invitation in her hand, had become the exception. Before she could respond, the man in the velvet jacket strolled toward them, still laughing from whatever joke he had told earlier. He pointed playfully at the chandelier, then noticed the situation. "What's going on here?" he asked, amusement still lingering on his face. "Just confirming this guest's attendance," the officer replied. The man in the velvet jacket looked Arielle up and down. Not cruelly, just casually. He gave a shrug. "Yeah, it's better to be careful," he said lightly. "Big event, lots of people trying to sneak in." Arielle felt the words like a tap on glass. Small, but sharp enough to leave a mark. "I didn't sneak in," she said quietly. The man smiled as if indulging a child. Of course. Nothing personal, but it was personal, because everything about her presence had been questioned in front of a room full of strangers. The room fell silent. Another woman approached, elegant, poised, wearing a tailored black suit. Her hair was silver, short, and perfectly styled. She walked with authority, the kind that didn't need introduction. "Is there a problem here?" she asked. Before Arielle could respond, the officer answered, just verifying her attendance. The woman turned to Arielle with a calm, steady gaze. "Do you have your invitation with you?" Arielle lifted it slightly. "Yes." The woman nodded. "Then you're fine. You don't need to explain yourself." But the damage was already done. Conversations around them had quieted. People were watching, whispering lightly, glancing between Arielle and the officers. Arielle's throat tightened, the kind of tightness that sneaks up from years of being misunderstood, underestimated, and misread in rooms where she worked twice as hard to blend in. She swallowed. She wished her mother were here. The doors open. The doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. Every head turned. Governor Elaine Montgomery entered with her security team, a composed figure in a crisp black suit, her presence instantly grounding the room. She walked with purpose, her steps measured, her focus forward. She looked radiant, she looked strong, she looked like home, but when her eyes met Arielle's, her expression shifted. Concern, then understanding, then something deeper, something protective and fierce. In seconds, she crossed the room with more urgency than Arielle had ever seen in public. "Is everything all right?" she asked, stepping beside her daughter. The officer straightened. "Governor, we were just..." Elaine raised a hand gently, not to silence him, but to pause the moment. She turned to Arielle. "Did something happen?" Arielle opened her mouth, but no sound came. The lump in her throat was too thick. Her eyes stung unexpectedly, not because she felt small, but because the sight of her mother had unlocked all the feelings she'd held tightly in place. The velvet-jacketed man stepped forward, suddenly uneasy. "We were only trying to help maintain order, Governor." Elaine's gaze shifted toward him, calm but unwavering. "And did she ask for help?" her mother asked. He hesitated. "Well, no." "Then what exactly were you maintaining?" Silence rippled outward like a wave. The moment the room learned her name, Elaine turned fully to the officers. "This is Arielle Montgomery," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "My daughter." A collective breath seemed to leave the ballroom. Eyes widened, whispers stopped, and for the first time that evening, Arielle felt the room shift, not because of who she appeared to be, but because of who she truly was. Something inside her loosened, but not in relief. It was something sadder, because she realized she'd needed her mother's presence to validate her identity. And that shouldn't have been necessary. After the apology, the officers apologized. The man in the velvet jacket apologized. Even the woman in the black suit expressed regret for not noticing sooner. But apologies weren't the point. Arielle nodded politely, accepting each one with grace. She had learned long ago that forgiveness and acceptance were two very different things. As the event resumed, people tried to interact with her differently, warmer, more eager, suddenly respectful. She answered politely, but her heart wasn't in the conversations. Her mother stayed close, sensing her daughter's hurt without needing an explanation. Later, when the music softened and the room dimmed slightly, Elaine and Arielle stepped out onto a quiet balcony overlooking the city lights. The air was cool, the night was still. Arielle leaned on the railing, finally letting her shoulders drop. "I didn't want you to see that," she whispered. Elaine stepped beside her. "I'm glad I did." Arielle blinked at her. "Why?" "Because now I know exactly where to start changing things next." Arielle let out a breath, not a sigh, but something like release. Her mother wasn't angry, she was determined, and that meant everything. Arielle's realization, as they stood together under the velvet night sky, Arielle felt something shift inside her. She had walked into that ballroom believing she belonged because of her invitation. She would walk out knowing she belonged because of who she was. Not because of her mother, not because of a title, but because she had stood her ground, even when her voice trembled. Her story wasn't about humiliation. It was about revelation, for her, for the room, for everyone who watched assumptions crumble in a single sentence. There are moments in life that break us quietly, moments where we stand alone in a room full of people and feel unseen. Moments that leave marks no one else can see, but those moments don't define us. What defines us is who stands with us, who speaks for us, and who reminds us of our worth when the world forgets to look deeper. Arielle didn't just learn something that night. She taught the room something it would never forget, and sometimes that is the beginning of a new kind of strength. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of your own journey, make sure to subscribe to Black Insight 2.0 for more powerful, emotional stories that speak to the soul. Your support helps keep these stories alive.